Evolutionary theory and psychology, the Savannah principle, why our brains are stuck in the Stone Age, history of psychology, California State University, Professor Mike Botwin. Having an understanding of where we're from as a species is an important component to understanding how evolutionary pressures have shaped us. To understand this, we need to talk about where we came from and the origins of our species in the heart of Africa. Theoretically, we all come from a single woman who lived in ancient times on the Savannah Plains. The biologists have dubbed her Mitochondrial Eve. Let's talk a little bit about the Savannah principle and see how it applies to our brains even today. Sir Robert Winston is an OB/GYN in England. He's seen here with some of the children that he's responsible for helping to bring into the world. He's also one of the biggest proponents of teaching science that I know of, and does an excellent job at that task. Several years ago, he performed in a series of videos called Instinct, which discussed evolutionary principles and human behavior. It also resulted in the book shown in this cover. I'd like you to watch this short clip from the Instinct videos where Robert Winston gives us some insight to the Savannah principle.
Because from the moment we're born, it's the energy that food gives us that keeps us alive.
Food is our fuel, and without it we die. But it's not just any food that we crave. Why is it we're all drawn to food like this, which is high in calories and fat?
1,000 billion eggs are produced worldwide every year. 600,000 tons of sugar are consumed each week. 800 tons of French fries are eaten every hour. And why?
It's because our appetites were formed in a world where abundant food was simply unimaginable.
For millions of years, food of any sort was hard to come by. Our ancestors almost certainly fought hard for the calories that were so crucial to their survival. So those that craved food that was high in calories and rich in fat were more likely to survive. It was survival of the fattest. The instinct to lay down fat for lean times ahead made perfect sense in an unpredictable world. But why are those instincts still with us today? Let me show you something rather extraordinary. This ribbon is going to represent the amount of time that's passed since the human story really began. It starts here about 4.5 million years ago when our first human ancestors were identified. And now each stride I take will represent about 100,000 years. As I walk through time to the present day, I'm passing thousands of generations of early humans who struggled to survive in this barren landscape. Those of them who craved calorie-rich food lived and passed on their genes to their children. Those who didn't died. Gradually, over millions of years, that craving for calories became instinctive behavior, handed down from generation to generation, and it's still embedded in all of us today. And this flag, just 10 centimeters, from the end of the ribbon is the distance in time, 10,000 years, since humans first started cultivating crops. And the tip of my pencil, just here, is the last 100 years, when for some of us at least, food has been readily available and plentiful. So it's no surprise that the instincts which were forged so many millions of years ago have not yet caught up with the plenty that some humans are now fortunate enough to enjoy. I always thought that I craved fatty food like this because I was greedy. So it's a comfort to discover that I'm simply a product of millions of years of evolution, a descendant from a time when greed really was good. Delicious.
This is home sweet home, the Savannah Plains of Africa, where our species started many millions of years ago. As you could see by Robert Winston's video, it's been a short time since we've been gone from these very beautiful plains. In fact, 99.9% of the history of our species was spent on the African savanna plains, and our primary job description was hunters and gatherers. The biologists believe we have a common ancestor, a common grandmother, if you would, that they've named mitochondrial Eve. So we're all Africans, no matter where we're from on this planet, because that's where our species started. The other thing we have to remember in terms of the Savannah principle is a scant 10,000 years ago, agriculture started, and we began to settle down, stick in one place, and raise crops. Now, if you remember from Robert Winston's ribbon, that's a very short period of time in our species' history. Insignificant, in fact, and since we've settled down agriculturally, and then for many of us as city dwellers, evolution has not been able to catch up with our rapidly changing environments. Hence, we're still primarily adapted to be our best on those great old savanna plains. Here is some artist conception of early agriculture, probably most likely grass-like crops. Well, the last of the Savannah principles is the one I find most intriguing, and that principle states that the human brain has difficulty comprehending and dealing with entities and situations that did not exist in the ancestral environment. Basically put, we may have created all of these things, but our brains have trouble dealing with them. And this is a very interesting phenomenon in our modern world. We tend to anthropomorphize things. When my computer's not working, as it hasn't been very friendly during this session, I yell at it. I guess I'll really have to worry if it yells back. But it's a non-physical, well, it is a physical thing. It's a non-living thing. Some of us name our cars. Some of us will barter with our cars. If we have a little bit of gas left, we talk to the car and tell it that, please get me to the next gas station. I'll never let your tank get that low again. Things like that. Well, let me give you a primary example. I am not a big Marvel movie fan, and I know a lot of you are. But here's one way that we're fooled constantly. Here are two pictures from the Spider-Man movie. And they are showing, one, a green screen, what was going on in reality. And you have the actor playing Spider-Man crawling along the floor. When it shows up on your movie screen, Spidey is climbing up the sheer rock face of a building somewhere. And it looks like he's quite high, and it looks like he's climbing up vertically. So we're easily fooled by these things. We know Spider-Man and his behaviors aren't real, but our brains can't process that information in a split second. We have to ruminate over it a bit. So we're still hardwired to live on the savanna plains of Africa. There has not been enough time evolutionarily for us to adapt to our city and urban environments. And we have so many different environments we now experience as humans. Adaptations will be very different than they were when we were a single group of individuals living on the plains of Africa. I find this a very important component in understanding evolutionary processes, and hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Bye now. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin, all rights reserved.